The 2022 Senate election will be very interesting to watch, especially as Joe Biden will have to gain a majority in the Senate, or at least keep one, in order to get his agenda passed. So, of course, this is my updated prediction for the 2022 Senate elections as of May, about halfway through May 2021. So let's get right into it. For the Democratic safe states, California with Alex Padilla, Oregon with Ron Wyden, and Washington with Patty Murray will all be safe, along with Northeast, Chris Van Hollen, Richard Blumenthal, and Patrick Leahy, along with Chuck Schumer, Tammy Duckworth, and Brian Schatz will all be safe states. The Democrats, there's not much to discuss there. And for the Republicans, Mike Crapo in Oregon, Mike Lee in Utah, John Hovenby in North Dakota, John Thune in South Dakota, Jerry Moran in Kansas, and James Langford in Oklahoma. Of course, John Boozman, John Kennedy, Alabama, which is actually an open seat. I think Mo Brooks will be pretty likely to win that, as he, I believe, will be getting Trump's endorsement or has already. Tim Scott in South Carolina, Rand Paul, and Todd Young. Iowa with Chuck Grassley will also be safe, since he's pretty popular there, and while he is pretty old, he appears to have filed to run already. So, that's not a sure thing that he will run, but if he does, I think that he will win by a pretty large margin. Missouri, a lot of the polls, initial polls have it as a likely state. Frankly, I think if Eric Greschens runs against a pretty good Democratic candidate like Jay Nixon, it could be likely, but overall, I think that he'll probably lose since he's a terrible candidate. And even if he does win, Missouri, well, it definitely has not been exempt from the national polarization, so it's entirely possible that it would still be safe, even if he isn't very popular, just because of the candidate is a Democrat. And, as of now, I believe it will be a safe state. And Alaska. I think either Lisa Murkowski will win, or some other Republican will win, but I don't see any Democrat or Independent winning as of now. It could potentially be likely, but that's as far as I'll go for now. And it is 45-45 in the Senate, a tied matchup. And we go into likely states. Colorado will be the only likely states for Democrats. State for Democrats. It is only one, of course, not plural. And it's because Michael Bennet seems pretty popular, but he's pretty moderate, and he wouldn't really get the essentially Denver progressive vote out. And since he ran for president, it could hurt him, and I believe it did hurt John Hickenlooper, and that's why he won by 9%, despite being a pretty popular former governor. So maybe 10, 11, or 11%, possibly 12 if he does well enough. And for the Republicans, Ohio will be likely, and Florida will be likely. To briefly go over these calls, Marco Rubio is pretty popular, and he won by 6% in 2016. And for one thing, this midterm will probably favor the Republicans more than, for example, 2018, and I think that the national environment will be, of course, D plus 5 maybe. And really, the Democrats can't do super well unless the national environment is like D plus 8 to D plus 10. So even with this, I think Marco Rubio could win by around 6% like his last election. Ohio is an open seat, and I think J.D. Vance will be the Republican nominee. He is the author of Hillbilly Elegy, which is a book about his childhood growing up in, I believe it was the rural heartland of America. So I think he'd be a good candidate. He's very popular, he's very working class, and you get those Trump voters out to win by a likely margin. And I believe Tim Ryan will probably be the Democratic nominee since there aren't any other major candidates. But frankly, it's really too late for him to really make any impact. Even if he's a good candidate, he would be a good candidate maybe 2012 or I guess maybe 2010, since that's when Rob Portman, before 2016, I guess maybe the last competitive election in Ohio for Senate. It wasn't a likely margin. I'm not sure what the margin was in that race, but really it's too late for Tim Ryan. And that will actually round out our likely states. Now, going into some of the closer states, I'll start out with essentially just the ones that will go to a certain party by the largest margin. Nevada will go to the Democrats by maybe around 2%. And a lot of people are saying that the DSA takeover of the Nevada Democratic Party will hurt Catherine Cortez Masto. If you do not know, a Democratic socialist became the new party chair. She was actually chair of Clark County beforehand, so she isn't exactly a newcomer to state politics. But if Catherine Cortez Masto all of a sudden starts campaigning like a Democratic socialist, she'll lose, of course. But so far, I think that it hasn't made enough of an impact for her to lose outright, so I think it'll be around 2%. And that'll be the only Democratic lean state. For Republicans, North Carolina will be lean. They have a few decent candidates outside of Pat McCrory, of course. Laura Trump may lose the suburbs and could potentially lose to a strong Democrat. But I think that unless, if it's like Mark Walker, the Republicans will win by a decent margin. But yeah, so for now, maybe 2%, 2-3% of the Republicans do well for the GOP. And New Hampshire will be the next lean GOP state, and this is because Chris Sununu, definitely mentioned as a top Republican candidate, seems pretty likely to run, and he is very strong against essentially a moderately popular kind of no-name senator in Maggie Hassan, and a lot of the New Hampshire voters would vote for him over Maggie Hassan, so I think that he would win by maybe 1.5 to 2%. And that rounds out our lean states. It is 49 for the Republicans. They only need 2 more seats to win the Senate, and 47 for the Democrats. They only need 3 more seats to win the Senate, 51 for an outright majority without the tiebreaker vote of Kamala Harris. So I think Arizona will be tilt. Republicans definitely can nominate a better candidate than Martha McSally, maybe except for Kelly Ward. I think she's the only candidate that could be worse than Martha McSally. Overall, he is doing really well in the preliminary polls, but I don't think those mean much, especially this early. And they're pretty off in Arizona. They had him ahead by over 5% mostly. But even if you do adjust, Mark Kelly wins by a hefty margin. But I think that Republicans will, if they learn from their mistakes and nominate a better candidate for the suburbs, it'll be around 1% for Mark Kelly. Georgia, Herschel Walker seems like a pretty decent candidate, but I don't think that he will gain enough in the suburbs to win. I think he'd improve on Kelly Loeffler's margin, especially since he'd drive up rural turnout and maybe improve in the suburbs, as I mentioned earlier. But in the end, I think Raphael Warnock will prevail over him in another term as the senator from Georgia. So now we have the last 2 states, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Both states that Joe Biden won and are actually GOP seats. One is an open seat, which is Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin might actually be an open seat if Ron Johnson retires. So I think that Pennsylvania will go to the Democrats. The Democrats have a pretty good lineup right now. Essentially, Connor Lamb, the representative from Western Pennsylvania, is looking pretty likely to run, and there's also Malcolm Kenyatta, a Philadelphia-based state representative, and John Fetterman, the progressive lieutenant governor of the state. These are all pretty good candidates for multiple reasons. I'm actually going to go more in depth about this with a video coming up, so make sure to stay tuned for that. John Fetterman would do pretty well in Philadelphia. He'd probably excite a lot of voters with his progressive ideas. He wouldn't do as well in the suburbs, and especially against someone like Ryan Costello, who is a very moderate GOP former representative who would definitely gain in the suburbs, but would definitely lack in the rural western areas. So, for example, if John Fetterman was against Ryan Costello, he might actually gain some of the Obama-Trump voters in the western Pennsylvania. But overall, he'd still win because really Democrat only needs slight suburban support to win Pittsburgh and to get a decent amount in the suburbs. And John Fetterman could supply that. I think Malcolm Kenyatta is the most electable candidate since he would be good for the suburbs and for Philadelphia and win with a Biden-like coalition. And Connor Lamb is pretty moderate and he could do well in Pittsburgh and in the suburbs, but maybe not as well in Philadelphia. Overall, the 2 Republican candidates, Sean Parnell and Ryan Costello. Sean Parnell actually ran against Connor Lamb in 2018 for his House seat and lost by about 2%. I think that neither one of them could win since they would essentially be a trade-off. Ryan Costello would do well in the suburbs, but not the rural areas, and Sean Parnell would do well in the rural areas, but not the suburbs. So that's why that's going to the Democrats, and I think the Republicans will win in Wisconsin, albeit they would have a victory, yet Democrats would still win the Senate, as they would have Kamala Harris's tie-breaking vote. So in Wisconsin, the Republicans have a pretty decent lineup of people to run. They have Sean Duffy, who is a decent candidate. I think he'd do well in the wild counties and the rural counties and the blue-collar counties like the driftless regions in the Southwest. And with that coalition, Republicans could definitely win, as there aren't a ton of good Democrats who would win this state. Essentially, Democrats have to turn up in the cities, do decently in the suburbs and in the blue-collar areas. So it's possible. Wisconsin will be pretty close, but in the end, I think the Republicans will win it. So there you have it, folks. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe. I like to thank you all for 100 subscribers. It's a really great, honestly. So thank you all for that. I will be having a video on that soon, talking about a possible live stream. So again, stay tuned for that. Tell me your prediction in the comment section down below. Any feedback I appreciate that, and video suggestions are always welcome. Check out the description. I have some links to Discord servers I'm active in, and join those. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.